You're live.
You're live. Right, there's going to be a bit of a lag, but yeah, I am here with Mills, no surname.
No, that's good. Thank you very much for not revealing that surname. I have actually had the last few days. Oh look, my inability to not press every button. Where are we? Is this actually?
Yeah. It is. It's right? A bit of a lag because we're streaming from. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's really great to have you here. Can I tell everyone how we connected?
You can do anything. There's nothing you can't do. I don't mind at all.
So anyway, we sorry, technical thing. We're recording from here. 2 people with ADHD running a live stream.
I'm not involved.
Oh, yeah, totally on me. Yeah. All right, quick time. So anyway, Mills and I connected because you got diagnosed with ADHD.
I did, very late into the game.
Yeah.
So, when were you diagnosed?
I was 34, so 2014. Yeah, adult ADHD.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess leading up to 40, as I'm 41 now, I was, for all sorts of reasons, maybe it's because I was becoming 40 soon, and business has been, grown and grown and grown. I think I just got to a point where something wasn't right. I guess, and so I went on this kind of self-introspection, trying to understand like why I was feeling like I was, which I had absolutely no idea would end up with being diagnosed with ADHD. But I stopped drinking. I ran a lot. I eventually ended up doing like a 100-mile marathon or ultra marathon, and starting to see a therapist. And then actually, I guess after 15 years, or then about 12 years, I've built enough video to maintain smooth streaming.
Okay.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I've distracted myself. Yeah, so I think in that giving myself like a good year and a half of just trying to understand what it was that was was just confusing me. And actually, I think if I think about it now, it just felt like this. I'm sure you've gone through it. It's like this constant need or feeling that anything other than what you've got in front of you or what you're doing is. But you always want something more, and I don't mean money. I mean more success, or nothing was ever quite good enough. So it felt, I think what had been so powerful for me in kind of driving me on to grow, to use what I didn't know was the skill I had to expand a creative community. Eventually, it became very tiring for me, and so when I went through this journey, eventually seeing a weekly therapist, we eventually just sort of discovered, actually through seeing somebody else being diagnosed and starting to take medication, and then looking at the sort of what's the word, menu of things that helps you understand you are potentially ADHD. It's just made sense to me. Yeah. So I went to up in the Nightingale up in Marylebone.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing because in talking to her, I don't know how it was for you, but I guess I assumed that to be diagnosed with anything, you need to do some sort of blood test or something. But yeah, it was a series of questions for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically and a questionnaire, and a week later, bang,
you got the diagnosis. Yeah.
Best
it's interesting. What really I picked up on is, that drive. I think with people with ADHD, it's like being better, striving for more.
Yeah.
It can feel.
Is that something you felt as well?
I do. And I remember reading in a book, actually, that the number one thing that causes people with ADHD distress is the constant feeling of not being good enough, or striving for perfection and not getting there. And, I'm sure it manifests itself differently in other people. I know for me, it's just like, one goal achieved, and then it's like, I haven't even finished that one, and I'm on to the next one.
That's exactly the same. And it's interesting that you said, feeling like, what was it you said? Feeling like that you're not good enough, or you're letting somebody down, or did you say that?
Yeah.
I struggle with that a lot. I think now I'm able to kind of understand, because I think, leading up to that, I think without knowing anything, when I was growing up, I knew I was dyslexic, so I always believed that I always knew that there was an element of slightly different sort of cognitive thinking. And I guess I thought it was always that. But I'd never associated the fact that I was often kicked out of class, not in a sort of, just not because I was naughty, but because I was always overly chatty. I always wanted I was a busy, if I think back now and I have me thinking about and processing the past, often teachers would say he's got great potential, but he's just so chatty. He's never mind his own business. And I think, of course, sadly, and it's probably sadly even now, teachers see that as somebody who's being going against the system. And unfortunately, of course, the system didn't work for me. That's why I'd get myself out of the class, because I don't want to sit down. It's like, what the hell? But that's sort of my lucky position. I always understand this, because I triumphantly like to talk about ADHD and how, for me, it's been extremely powerful. But of course, I was very lucky that I had a support around me. My wife, I've been with for 22 years. My other wife, Sinks, who's my partner in Ustwo, I've known him for 30 years. And so I guess those two between them never made me, even though they didn't know I had it, they would pick up all the stuff that I just wouldn't do.
Yeah.
So my job really at Ustwo was just to be the continual hype man, really. Just be there, encourage, use again, I didn't know it, but the impulsivity that often comes with ADHD allowed me to be the huge risk taker in between us both. And I think when you've got a huge risk and you've got somebody else who is pretty up for risk, but he's also quite calculated, we often would find that we would take bets on things that many other companies wouldn't.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's amazing. I guess I really hear that you had the structure and the support to kind of bring out the best in you. Yeah. And I guess it's great that in some way you recognise that, or people around you recognise maybe what you can do and where you might need support. Yeah. I mean,
that's why I do feel I have to be careful in kind of like when I do talks. I 100% now launch into talking about ADHD because I'm very proud of it. It's been something that now I know how to sort of manage it and know how to utilize the varying aspects of it and know also how to deal with the downsides of it. I always make sure that I understand. Like I said, I am in a lucky position. I wasn't forced into, unlike school, I wasn't forced into a system that didn't work for me. In fact, the only job I had with Sinks, ironically my co-founder at Ustwo, before Ustwo, was in a very zany, very small but extremely, I would say, talky studio where it was more about the vibe of energy. Like everyone there understood that it was just, it was based like a party. So I think in taking sort of, there I learned that it's actually, wait a second, my skills here are actually very useful. People tend to listen to what I say. They like my enthusiasm if they don't understand the order I'm saying it in. And I think when we took that into us too, our main focus for me and Sinks was just to build an environment where people could be themselves. I mean, we were definitely naive to what that meant then to now, but it was like, let's have fun, even though we're going to work super hard. Let's create an environment where it doesn't feel like you're going to like an office. It's like, and hence I was for me, that the way that was seen visually was like the walls would be crazy. There'd be like memes everywhere, even before memes were cool. There'd be like, I'd be constantly thinking about how to create what I call touch points where anyone who walked into the studio, wherever they they'd see something weird. Because again, I didn't know that, but growing up, I think it makes a lot of sense that I was very frustrated that people around me were often held in much higher regard because they fitted into a system that this society seemed to really admire. For me, I was very driven always to try to prove to myself and probably actually to get positive attention from other people that you could be different and still succeed. So Ustwo, the whole spirit of Ustwo was like we call it a fampany, was that mostly people don't consider business as a place where you can actually get on with your co-workers and you can actually go through ups and downs together and you can actually talk as a human being and you can. So that for me was very important. Again, now I'm kind of like, it's not revisionist history as such, but I wasn't aware of my skills and I wasn't aware that although I cannot do to-do lists particularly, I'm trying now. What I can do is I can walk into a room with absolutely no preparation and feel much more comfortable and actually in that environment than if I had to plan. Like if you had told me that I had to sort of...
Here are your questions.
Yeah, and I just think it's, for me, I don't know if it's an ADHD symptom, but I think for authenticity for me is something I absolutely admire in others. So for me, the idea of like pre-planning what I'm going to answer means I struggle with believing that can be authentic. Of course, that's just my own issues. But
yeah. Well, it seems that you're someone who operates like that, right? It's stored in your brain and it comes out in as you speak.
Yes, yeah, and a year before, it's funny because again, a year before I got diagnosed, and I got diagnosed about 5 months ago maybe, without knowing it, I wasn't confident, and that comes across as bizarre to maybe people who might know me, but I think, for one, we had built a very big business that had become very successful, and we had purposely designed it to, although we want to believe that us two needs our spirit, we didn't want us to be, me and Sinks to be a barrier to the potential if something should happen to us. One thing and I think, so eventually I started just doing a podcast on my own. It's just in my basement because I was obviously super worried what anyone would say. So if you just hide away and don't tell anyone, and if you don't tell anyone about it, obviously no one finds it. But actually what I did is, over that first month where I just was doing it for myself, I was just trying to learn how to be not so worried about what people think about me. What I found very quickly was that actually what I was using it for was just a way of outputting all the madnesses in my head that I love, and realizing that for me, and Sinks always laughs at this, but I often will listen to them back maybe later in the evening, because I kind of feel for me, and this is I didn't realize this before, that I need to hear myself saying something in order to work out if I believe what I'm saying. So it's not like I'm saying it for an effect. I'm saying, let me run through the scenario, better out. I can't theorize it. So now I understand that. I mean, I do a podcast every day now where I'm just talking to myself. I mean, I probably talk for an hour, just complete like mad. And it's not madness, because it found a sort of niche, like 1,000 people or so listen to it a day, let's say. But those people are people who clearly resonate with some of the way I'm being, perhaps, and they love the fact, well, the ones that talk to me, that I'm open about this. Yeah. Like, I'm not scared of ADHD. And in fact, I'm driven now to try to put it in a better light.
Yeah.
Because you must know that Christ, this is the, unfortunately the medication has ran out already, but finding out that I had ADHD was was big for me anyway. I wasn't going into that deciding straight away that I'd start taking medication. However, and actually my doctor advised me that actually, Mills, you don't need to take medication because your environment that you've created for you works for you. So it's not like you're having to be oppressed by some sort of corporate system. But actually, one thing that I was definitely causing, my family life was harder. I was finding it very difficult to sort of properly empathize with Lise, my wife's understanding of who I was. So it's when we found out together and she came with me that I had it helped her really put a lot of perspective on the past, which was really good for our relationship. It definitely got closer. But I mean, Lise still to this day, even with the medication I take, says that she never really knows what version of me will wake up. It's not so bipolar, but it's I don't know, it's weird. That's not very good experience.
I do you know what I relate, because when you're on this kind of anxiety, happy, really stressed out, like just for me, small things will set me off, and that I'll have
a thing or an emotion, or
normally a disappointment or something I feel I've not done well, and that will have like implications for a few days. So it's like the people who live with us kind of get to see that range of emotions. It maybe is deeper and more turbulent than. I
think when we met before, I 100% agree with that. That what you just did then, for me is something I have to work on. I mean, I am able to have extreme highs of feeling like unstoppable in everything. And now I'm aware that very soon after that, there will be an extreme low to complement it in many ways. I mean, how can you stay up so high without crashing? But now I'm aware, I kind of know when I'm in that down, I know that the chances are a few hours a day will pass, it'll be gone. So whereas probably for 15 years, I misunderstood that feeling and I probably dawned on that too much. and felt like, the things, I would just, like you hear an opinion, someone would tell me they didn't like me or something, or I'd done, I would take everything to heart. And far too deep. It's stupid, really.
It's being sensitive, right? A lot of people with ADHD are sensitive.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, that's why I think, you're very personable. When we first met each other, I could sense that as well. But you're right, sensitivity but that's a wonderful thing.
It is.
It's a wonderful. I think one of the things that Lisa or Sinks would always say about me, and they said this. I'm not saying that I don't agree or do agree, but they said that Sinks will often say Mills has the ability. He doesn't have the ability to do any doing, but he has the ability to walk into a room and then people will just like him. And it's not. I think that's not because I'm sort of convinced them to like me. I think it's because my natural way is to be curious. I know I'm talking more here than I'm being curious, but to be curious to them.
We're here to talk about you.
Yeah, true. I always find that a bit, okay. But to be curious about somebody else, to actually genuinely want to empathise with them, want to understand them, I think that's a very simple thing that I think maybe it just naturally comes to me, that just endears people to me. But I'm doing it because, it's always nice to have someone like you, but I think it's the best way to connect us, because I don't really want to be on the periphery of any conversation. I want to be talking about real stuff. Like, I don't want to talk about this admin of life. I want to talk about the real things, depressions, like relationships. How do you like how I struggled massively with, I think, me not being able to prioritize my two children. I have an 11-year-old Gracie and Louis, who's 8, and those two have been obviously born at well into my last 2 days, where I wasn't able to have balance, so it was 100% us two. Sadly, Lisa's has always quantified that. She always knew that she was number 2, and or maybe even lower down, she would say, and the kids. And it was just that for me, I think part of ADHD it's funny because when I've read about ADHD, some people say that some of the symptoms are like hyper focus, and I wouldn't have associated that with me until I suddenly realised, wait, so I've had hyper focus on an Ustwo scale where nothing mattered other than that. It would be 24 hours a day, never think any capacity to think about anything else. So maybe I did have that, but it has an effect still to this day, even with medication. I think I still not what I think the family side of things is a lot harder, because I'm being part of a sort of an evolving and at the sort of leading edge of all the sort of things we're doing at Ustwo is extremely exciting. Putting kids to bed is not. Obviously there's elements of it are, but there is if I had to be brutally honest, it's hard to transfer what I'm doing today into an environment at home, and I haven't worked that balance out yet.
I really relate. I remember this older woman. She was the one. She told me I had ADHD. I was like, what are you talking about? She was about 60 and she got diagnosed. She really helped me a lot. But she said, look, you've got to look at your kind of hyper scale. You need to be maintaining at about 6 or 7 when you're in hyper focus. But if you're at an 8 all day or a 9 all day, and then it's really hard to transition. It's almost like you need to go and meditate for an hour before you step in the house to kind of come down. So
that's actually Shamila, my doctor for the ADHD that I still continue to see, if anything, to give her more sort of feedback every 3 months. She would say that, and so with my therapist, perhaps try to look into you get off the tube, being extremely basic here, get off the tube, and then that 20 or that 5 minutes to get home, perhaps slow that down, turn the phone off, which I've been trying recently, so that it's an easier landing into that environment. Because equally, if the hyper Mills comes into that environment, it's not good for the kids who suddenly see this all energy madman who's and I'm able to understand it's not like total crazy, because I've definitely met more crazy ADHD people, but it's hard because for me hyperactivity or just being enthusiastic is something that actually is being my strength. So I'm going to jump as we're ADHD, we're allowed to jump around. I'm being fairly. I think one of my. You didn't ask the question, but maybe is the medication bit now? Or should we talk later?
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking one fear I definitely have. Once I found out I had it, I was actually very proud. I think I'd been searching for a purpose beyond building a business or being a dad or a husband. And I think I remember walking away from the hospital thinking, wow, that I can actually claim something. I can actually, actively enhance and bring more visibility to it in a positive way. I can prove maybe people who are not as lucky as me can see, you know, what I've done as a give them belief that they can do so. So that I remember walking away and thinking, fuck, I'm sorry.
You can swear.
I'm
absolutely
good.
fine.
I mostly swear. But I love that. So, but then I remember then thinking with Lee, like, should we? I mean, obviously she doesn't take it, but should we take the medication? And I was definitely scared that, you know, if you spent all your life thinking that you are a certain type of person, like how much of who I am will be lost with this medication. I was very lucky, so I take L. Because what do you do?
Yeah, I was taking L-Vance for a long time. Yeah.
You had a different, because I mean I'm sort of only 4 months into it. I take exactly 60 milligrams a morning. I find that it gives me a couple of hours max of kind of like what I referred to this morning, someone as cuddly feeling. It feels like it's warm. I try to selfishly go up in a little room that I've got upstairs in my house where I can just get on with things, and I really enjoy that 2 hours where I feel like I can actually methodically go through lists, and there's a satisfaction around that, whereas there never was before. It's weird because I think so to answer the thing that I posed to myself, I actually didn't lose anything at all. Maybe that's a lucky thing, but I don't associate any difference between me on the medication versus off, other than unquestionably my mind slows down.
It slows down.
So if I wake up now in the morning, it's straight away I'm hyper aware of oh my god, this is frenetic, and then when I remember you can take a pill whenever you want that could just slow that down. It's beautiful.
It's nice.
It's real nice. Yeah.
I do know one thing I really want to ask you, which I'm curious about, is, you know, we all have such like diverse range of skills, but in some way you've managed to, like, not everyone with ADHD has the follow through to kind of make things happen.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you have had some support, but you've obviously got something that you're able to join the dots and make things successful, look good, profitable, whatever your skill is. And I'm just wondering what it is, despite those kind of weaknesses, that you've really been able to bring to the table.
Well, I definitely don't see them as weaknesses. I know you're just using that as a word. But unquestioned, you know, I had sinks. So sinks, for whether it was fate or the fact that one of my best mates, you know, my best mate ever, is the counter opposite of me. Like, all the skills that I have, he has them, but in lesser extent. And then all the skills I don't have, he absolutely does have. So I think I was off, you know, my role at the wider family level now, but before that, us two, was to be a bit of a visionary, to say the crazy things, to ask the questions that actually are not stupid, but most people in a room wouldn't ask because they feel like you shouldn't ask questions. Whereas I now understand the only way I can process stuff is by asking out loud and actually roll and going through a certain sort of role play of trying to visualize what it is they're actually saying. Again, theory is bad to me. But what if the question itself was, I mean, I feel like if I had to do any of these things, like sort of administration, I dare say I could have done them. I think I probably kept on telling myself how boring they were, and because more and more people removed stuff from me, I think I just lost the ability to even care about it. I mean, I think what I learned is that, whether it's true or not, there's meant to be like a disconnection between whatever makes me feel like doing a certain task would actually be of any interest, like would give me anything. So, you know, now I definitely get it when I take the L-Vans, but the question was again, it was like, how do you get stuff done? I mean, I guess the drive thing always outweighed it. Like, I had this feeling, I had this belief that it was not fair that lots of people that I just felt like were just normal. I know I don't like that normal word, or there were statistically a bigger amount of people were, you know, I just didn't like the fact they got attention. That's probably, you know, that's definitely, I think my therapist would say that, you know, I definitely am an attention seeker. I'm not afraid to admit that now, because there must be some problem when I was younger, but I think because I was more ignored. So I'm jumping a bit here. I think it's actually, but then I've thought to myself, it's actually the opposite, because I think if I look back in past, I think actually a lot of my teachers, I was lucky that teachers did believe in me. They actually, without knowing, I think they were actually, the reason I succeeded was not because people didn't believe me, but it was actually perhaps because they did believe in me, and that each step I got enough positive reinforcement that I could do this. And then I had this feeling like, well, if I don't achieve, then this sort of whatever it is I'm trying to achieve, which for me was just building something that people would respect, then that would be failing. And actually, when I had my fallout a couple of years leading into ADHD, the problem I felt I had is that I lost that ambition. I had definitely achieved a lot of my dreams within the world of the creative business that we'd built, and yet I still felt like, oh my God, it hasn't stopped that insatiable need. So I kind of felt at that stage, I really kind of lost my mind, because it's like, this is not going to stop. This need to build something more. It's just, and it's tiring. I'm getting older. So I think, I think I've completely forgotten what the hell I was saying. What joke? It's the Elvans. I swear it does remove memory.
Do you know what? I think what I hear you saying is like, you kind of, you prove to yourself that you can do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it's like the focus needs to be internal, or, because if you put so much energy into your business. That's
exactly, very clever. You were listening. I wasn't even listening myself. Yeah, I think that's exactly it, actually, because I am a person that wants to, people pleaser sounds negative, but I'm very lucky, and I understand this, that I get a huge kick and a huge energy burst from helping somebody else feel better about themselves. I hope that's an ADHD signal. I don't know if it is, but I'm just so delighted by having that. But what I think I learned is exactly your point. You can give so much, but that takes a lot out of you. And I wasn't fueling myself in any way. And in fact, I was drinking a lot of alcohol. Not so much that it's like out of hand, but actually when me and Sink looked at it, it's like we've been drinking every night for 15 years. That's probably not a good signal. So that self-medication, which can be a powerful thing, don't get me wrong, I still do it. But I started to take that fitness, give myself some self-love. If I want to give the best love to other people, then I need to love myself. And I think that journey that led me to ADHD. And I've also, jumping here, but the running, I know that if I don't do exercise every day, my day will not be as good. And before we knew about ADHD, I remember many, many years ago, one of the design directors said to me, "Mills, have you done your running today?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, I can tell because you're throwing grenades, use this thing." Yeah. I wasn't aware of that.
So that calms you down.
I've actually listened to a number of, as you I'm sure have done, once you get diagnosed, you start being more curious about what it means. So I've listened to like some leading scientists in America saying that they're trying to really advocate for getting that into schools, because apparently, especially for children, not having that burning that energy. We know sitting in a room,
iPad,
it's an absolute joke. But also, one thing that I'm again lucky, so I keep repeating myself, is that rather than, I took a decision, whether it was the right one or not, to not focus on trying to be better at all the things I'm not good at, and actually just go all in on the things I am good at. So I'm never going to be, people don't need, in my community, don't need me to be anything more than me. They need me to be, on my game when I need to be on my game. And they see me as a light of, it helps them, I think, us tubies in general understand, well, it probably helps them at least be interested or laugh. Because just having somebody walking around as being naturally curious and energetic, I think it brings it, and being the person who's talking about ambition.
It sounds like people can come to you.
People can definitely come to me, and I always, again, I'm quite needy. I feel like I need connection with people, and actually, in my sort of quest for what is the meaning of life, which I thought I was trying to answer on the way to ADHD, was more that at the end of the day, every day is about enjoying as much as you can with people, with doing the things you love, if you can do it with the people you love. So that's, we always had that rule in Ustwo from day one, but I didn't realise the importance of it.
I want to say something actually, because when I was diagnosed, I had a job. I was travelling around the world. I was kind of running this, running a business unit, and I was exhausted. I was stressed out, and I was in a really corporate environment. So I got diagnosed, and it was like, I better not tell anyone, or I did tell my bosses about it, and there was this kind of like, what's wrong with you? And I just kind of thinking how nice it would have been to have been in an environment. I really had to get out of that environment because I think when you can't show up as yourself, or you have to kind of pretend that you're someone else, that just kind of eats away at you. And it sounds like in some way from the beginning anyway, you've been able to just show up. So it's interesting. Every time I see you, can we show people your socks?
Oh, I don't have... They're not actually as bright as they have been, but they are. I always wear shorts.
You wear shorts, winter.
We can't see their shorts.
Winter. So, you show up as yourself, and I'm sure you've got some pretty corporate clients, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always... I always ascertained that. Well, one, I wasn't willing to work I've never worked in an environment as a depressive as one as that. I've never chosen the corporate route. I've only really known us two, and that was an environment that we expect people to be whoever they want to be. But it's probably best to be yourself. And I think for me, why I wear things like shorts is actually because it's just super comfortable. I really don't care about clothes as such. If I could just wear tiny pants, I would. But then I'd also be in a bar in like a hot country, so it would be less weird than I would explain there. But I think for me, I am trying to signal as quickly as possible through visually. Oh, that guy's wearing shorts. There's a curiosity about that. But he also runs a successful company. Some people cannot even fathom the concept of being successful with a business where you've got lots of great people doing great work and you wear shorts. I mean, that's too much for them because some people are so sort of restricted in that thinking. But
they've had to play the game.
They've had to play the game, and I'm saying I'm lucky again, but I've never had to play a game. I don't want to play a game. I haven't got enough time to play games, and that's why. So for me, vulnerability is actually my biggest. Is the quickest way for me to continuously remind the entire organisation, even when it got to big like 400 or 500 people, that ultimately one of the owners is telling everyone about how they feel, because I had a sort of state of depression many years before where I felt like common convention tells you as a leader you've got to be strong. Well, for me that's just bullshit, because I was like, I've got this community of people which I love, and are you telling me I can't tell them that I'm not feeling the love for the company that I've built? So I told them. I wrote this huge, well, it wasn't a huge, it was a mail that just said, look, I'm not in a good way. A lot of people reached out to me. It was good. So recently, as soon as I found out I had ADHD, I thought, wait a sec, there's a chance. If I didn't know it, maybe certainly in the creative field, we know that lots of people probably have it, because actually that's why they're creative, certainly within the spectrum. So telling everyone, I wrote a big email, I wrote a big Slack, anywhere I could get information out. And Bob's your uncle. What happens? People feel that tells people that you are allowed to say what you want. Don't do bad things, and at the same time, lots of people reached out to me independently and said, wow, across all the studios, saying, how did people are always curious, how did you find out, what's the process? So if I can bring, for me, it's a really wonderful, kind, powerful thing to be able to do. It's, me and Sinks ultimately own the culture tap. Mm-hmm. That's really what we own, because we're not bothered about the money side. It's like our values are deeply bought. If we change anything in our company, it has a big effect. So I want people to feel like. So I often see emails going out to everyone sort of saying, I feel this or I feel that, and can anyone help? And that's a good place to be.
It is a good place.
Yeah.
I just, before we wrap up, I want to talk a little bit about how, because it seems like you've got people here who really love what they do. They're really good at what they do. They work hard. But also, I've been here, just everyone looks relaxed.
Oh, you haven't moved to the studio, have you? Because we've also got 6 or 7 other studios.
Oh, of course. So this is the game studio.
This is the game studio.
Just to clarify, if anyone's not clear. So you started the digital transformation studio and design studio.
Yeah.
And then as a side project,
yeah,
you developed Monument Valley, because I think actually people would love to hear a little bit about
So naively, Sinks and myself, when we started out 15 years ago, I definitely didn't know I'd be sitting here and it would be of the scale that it is, and having the positive impact I hope that this company, which has been designed around, is delivering. But what did we know? We knew if you create a nice environment and you treat people like human beings, and you inspire them through not through a vision, because we didn't have one, but through your ability to be hands-on and do stuff. Like, we were super passionate about doing the best we could for anyone that came our way at the time. And then so initially we all only knew about being a client service. So, nowadays we work for the Facebooks or for the Airbnbs or for the co-ops, or, a real range across the world of all the big, all your big brands that we think are making a good effort in the world. We're hopefully helping. But about 4 years in, that was probably far too restrictive for me personally. So Sync's much more focused on that and built it hugely. I then just used the money we made from that to be able to put our own impact out into the world. So for me, it was very important that us two would be also known for working and creating incredible work for our partners, but also having our own work out there. So, Monument Valley was the culmination of actually like 6 years of investment, where we were produced maybe 16, 7, probably I think it is 16 different, I would say, graphical toys, up to definitely it was a few games before Monument Valley, but it was just all sorts. We were just curious, like, let's try and take on the publisher world and create a publishing app, and then let's make a sound recording app. It was just like learning on the job. I call it success for failure. Nothing ever did well financially, but internally, I convinced myself and Sings to eventually have, we put £1 million of time and effort into making Monument Valley. Now, by then, I had realised that my true strength is actually being the enabler of other people. So we took all those learnings and put together a team that would, an 8-person team ultimately, for Monument Valley, and gave them the freedom and space to express themselves. That's all I did, and I can be as proud of the fact that I wasn't hands-on. I had a very loose framework of the things I believe that if we did certain things and we reached certain people, I felt like there was an opportunity in this space to do something different. I want it to be premium, but other than that, I believed in people, and my belief in people, my ability to want and need to take risk, which I think is where you really do well. It gave birth to Monument Valley, and off the back of Monument Valley, we decided to actually say, well, okay, why don't we? There is a different skill set needed to run a gaming, to be a game maker and to run a gaming company. So we took that project team out. We decided, for all sorts of reasons, to move down to Oval, away from Shoreditch, which is where we were born. And by then I say the other studios we're in New York, we're all over the world, but the game studio is in Oval, and sort of started again, but just taking all the best bits we learned from those 12 years of building a business, and turned it into what we're in today. Although you can only see a bookshelf. So I think me and Sinks are kind of, as simple as it is, we are about unleashing. We say unleashing the collective genius. For me, I get my inspiration, as I said, from helping other people achieve like whatever dream it is. And I just, this is a space where I come to get energy about creativity. Everywhere you look, and you've seen it, it's just people putting their heart into something that they want to do. I do not tell Dan and Maria and Pasha, the leaders here, what to do. Of course they're showing me stuff, but I believe in them. I believe in people. So that's how this was built. Very lucky.
It is. Do you know one thing that really struck me too, which I think you said that you'd managed to get your kind of working week down to a very small amount, so that you've got time to do other stuff. What else do you do when you're not working? Yeah. So through the ups and downs of trying to work out like where my ambition had gone. If you only in building us too, I had so much ambition and so much drive to make it a success that it was so all encompassing that I forgot about my wife and my kids. And I still do. I don't want to come across as someone who, it wasn't a conscious thing. It was just, Lisa refers to, they were a triangle or a three, and I was this sort of person that came in and out of their life. And Lisa always knew what she was signed up for, not the ADHD part, in terms, because I've known her, I'd met her at college before that. But oh my God, where the hell was I going? I've forgotten again. That's blackouts. What do you ask me? What do you do?
Oh, that's it. Sorry. So actually, Sinks was in. We had risen this wave, the client service side of it. We had expanded all around the world. It was great, and for many years, it was just what we refer to as a youth centre. There was, rules were there. There are unwritten rules. We could manage 300 or 400 people just through, because we were kind of like a big cliquey gang or youth centre. When eventually a lot of the world caught up with the sort of skills that we had, I think we had just realised that we hadn't exercised a lot of the muscles that a company of 400 people should have exercised in terms of understanding how to turn it into a proper business. So I think in that time we took a decision. We decided to go from we're going to do everything ourselves to we're actually going to call on the help of people who have done things like this before. We're not afraid anymore to, I was always afraid to be seen as a company because I want to be a family. So if I brought in advisors, that's a company thing. But I got over it. And actually I very quickly realised I should have done that on day one. But we made the decision to invest our way out of the problems we found ourselves in, which was, Monument Valley had been this massive success, but it had also been a detractor from our core business at the time. I mean, now they're kind of equal in many ways, but at the time, me and Sinx's attention moved to the games to set this up, and to take two charismatic leaders out of a big organisation and to believe it works still. It just wasn't true. So we didn't, we weren't going to give up. We allowed ourselves to think, have we got this, to go again, to reshape the entire business. And we decided yes. And part of that was like, let's bring in CEOs. So Maria runs the games, Carsten runs the studios, and Justin runs the investment side. So we brought professional people in that our job is to inspire them. And that gave me and Sinx time to actually be able to pull back. And he pulled my salary back as well, because we weren't any longer reliant. Operationally, it wasn't going to cause, because we never want to cause damage to our company. So it gave me time. In that time, I learned. I spent most of the time it was just soul searching by walking around or running. I mean, that was as simple as that. People would often ask me, "What do you do?" Time would just fly because I would just be on my own a lot. I spent a lot of time on my own, understanding that I love being with people, but I equally absolutely love being on my own. So I need to balance that. I can be with people all day. But if I know I've got to be with them all day, maybe I should take the morning off to chill. Now, so ironically, I cut myself down to 1 day a week, where I had to be in to be like all the sort of certain things I had to be involved in. And I think what happened is that gave me enough distance from us to really work out whether or not, I did still have enough in me. Whereas, I'd lost my ambition, but it came back because I realised actually, eventually, and this came up maybe a month or so ago, I really realised it, that although I wasn't needed per se operationally, actually as a company, as an aesthetical object, as a values and charisma type, they needed it. And people would actually write to me and say, "Mills, you've been in the studio today. That was so nice. Like we just need, you're different from everyone else. There's no one like you." And so to lose that, so feeling loved again in your own business or feeling wanted was a wonderful thing. So actually now, although Sync still pays me only for 1 day a week because I forgot to change it, I actually come in every day now because I'm inspired again. So it's a conscious choice. I don't want, but now I will also spend a lot of time at home in my studio that I built there, built as a desk. So balance for me is the thing I'm trying to work on now. It's an exciting time. I mean, I'm still learning. Even conversations I had with you before, I tried to spend as much time advising is the wrong word, but just telling the story of how I found out so that other people. And I think why I feel blessed, or not that I've said I'm blessed ever, but is I finally started to understand this concept of of a spectrum. I understand all of a sudden how my son is pretty severely dyslexic. How the system is really not working for him, and it's really sad. It's actually extremely sad because you really, you grow up in this world where you think that school is like the thing that you have to follow, but actually it doesn't. It's just a business. It doesn't actually cater for the spectrum. So if you're over here or over here, you're basically fucked.
It caters for the teachers.
It caters for the teachers. It caters for the most of not average, like the statistically bigger group. Neurotypical, and that's really sad. So that's why I want to be out more and try to. I want to make ADHD much more visibly interesting. Explain to. The reason I've been creative is because of my neurodiversity. Not in spite of.
In spite of. Well, I think really what I've taken here is, hey, let's focus on what we're good at. Let's not try and hone the weaknesses, but let's just celebrate.
I think that's a really good way of putting it, because I think the problem is you could spend a lot of time thinking that you have to bring up bring up your, the other weaknesses. But I mean, you should be aware of them and know what you can't do, and be good at explaining to people why you are like you are. But yeah, I do see this impulsiveness as a gift. Now, funny thing is, sorry, I'm jumped a bit, but impulsivity was the reason that I would just absolutely no problem give someone some investment, because I was like, well, you're amazing. I love what you're saying. You've got energy. I'm going to give you this. I'm not going to ask questions. That'd be stupid. Now at least I know that freedom that hits me every time. I can at least say, well, they're still going to love me tomorrow if I spend 24 hours thinking about it. So I can still override that, which I know, but at the same time I can be more aware. And I have this. I've got this tattoo of an owl here, which I got the other day, purely to remind me that I chose an owl because I guess they're clever. I can have my heart, but then what would the owl say? So I just allow myself to sort of question myself whether or not I'm just being impulsive for impulsive reason, or if there's a need to be impulsive. So nice. Thank you, by the way, for being interested. And I'm sorry, I know we were meant to have done this ages ago, but I'm such a joke. It happened.
I'm so glad it happened. So anyway, how can people reach you?
I mean, Mills@ustwo.com is the email route. I guess that you should use that if you. I mean, I'll usually get back the day, but I guess that allows you to have a slower to and fro. @MillsUs2, or one word, on Instagram or on Twitter. And I really like communication, so I love it. So yeah, so they're the best ways. And I'm always, if there's anything I can help with people, or if, I really want to try to work out how I can help more younger kids, because I feel like kids who are being completely missed. Like I need to try to give them at least a route. Again, there are definitely bigger spectrums of ADHD. It definitely must affect people more negatively than it affects me, but I think I can hopefully give them a bit of I've achieved what I set out to do, which is creating a community of people who have deep empathy for one another, who care for one another, who produce wonderful things like Monument Valley, but be a real human, and they respect the diversity of thinking. So
great. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.